Hello and welcome to another edition of 310 to Left. Tom Caron and Alex Speier in our Wasabi Fenway studios at Fenway Park, where there's been a lot of baseball with suspended games and not quite doubleheaders, game and a halfers. Is that what you call them?
Yeah, this is what a game in 2/3. Let's play 1 2/3.
There you go.
Tom.
That's what. Yes, as Ernie Banks never said, let's play a game and 66% of another. Of course, 310 to Left is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years, and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. A lot of talk about 1975. We're going to do that with the great Hall of Famer Jim Rice in just a little bit, but let's talk about this team and where they stand. We are in July. The trade deadline is coming. Craig Breslow on the air this week, and we'll hear from him shortly, doubled down and said we thought this was a playoff team. We still think it's a playoff team, and we are going to approach the trade deadline as such. That's all well and fine. But the odds are not great of them making the playoffs, and it won't take too many losses for those odds to get really bad. At what point have they blown their chance to have this team invest?
That's a great question, and part of it is always going to be contextual, because it's always a question of how's the rest of the American League doing, right? Is there a team? Is there another team in the American League that is going to stay more than a hot streak's length away from the Red Sox? Hasn't happened yet. Much they're very fortunate that there's been that the Seattles of the world have been okay, but really haven't gotten on an extended run, which is surprising given their starting pitching. But there's a reason why the Red Sox playoff odds are what they are, and there's a reason why they are right now fringe contenders. We've seen some bad things that can happen to teams when they do double down on that kind of fringe contention status, right? Like Lucas Giolito is a good example of a guy who moved a couple of years ago precisely at a time when a team was trying to push in on long shot playoff odds. The Angels, in their last year of Shohei Ohtani, decided we're still going to go for it, and they ended up giving away some pretty good prospects along the way. So without any payoff, they just went into the tank afterwards.
It doesn't feel like this team would give up a whole lot of prospect capital.
No.
And that's kind of the problem when you introduce the concept of payroll flexibility as part of the benefit of the Rafael Devers trade. Payroll flexibility is great in the offseason.
Right.
Because it's a shopping spree.
Yep.
This isn't go buy anything. This is give away one of your children. This analogy just got really weird. So let's back away from that. But you're giving away prospect capital.
Sorry, Jack.
Yeah. I didn't say Jack. It'd be Jack or Robbie. You can talk amongst yourselves. I didn't say Robbie either. Well, how about you? Which child would you trade away? Boy,
I wasn't volunteering them,
you
Tom.
That's fine. But the point is, you're giving away players in the organization as well as now. It opens doors to trades that might not be open, right? Like if teams are giving away rental players, if teams are trading away high-priced players that they don't want to hold on to, you could be in that arena now because you do have that payroll flexibility. But you have to be willing to give away with prospect capital. And we know from recent history that something this team is very, very slow to do.
Yes, but ... We have also seen the Red Sox trade away Nick York last year. Why? Not because he was a bad prospect, but because he was a redundant one. He was a little bit behind their kind of growing glut of middle infielders when you had Marcelo Meyer. They were looking at Christian Campbell as being an up-the-middle player as well, and Mikey Romero behind him, and Franklin Arias on the horizon. So you start dealing those players who are kind of moving on to the 40-man horizon, right? So York moves. Then Garrett Crochet. We've seen them moving prospect capital. In part, Teal obviously was not redundant, but Chase Mydroth was. Again, that middle infielder, even though he's been having a very nice season for the White Sox thus far. But where the Red Sox have a lot of depth, then you can only play so many guys at one position. Right. So that's where you really zero in on the fact that, they really do have an interesting number of young outfielders who are accumulating, who are stacking up in the system when it is, Cedar Rafaela playing really well, and Jarren Duran, who's a year removed from an all-star season, and Roman Anthony is here, and Yostinson Garcia is now on the horizon in AAA, and so you do have this. You do have some larger picture things that could allow them to move a prospect and also potentially to absorb money, right? You can increase your return by taking on another team's bad contract if you want to.
You talk about good young outfielders they have available. 3 of them are at the major league level.
Yep.
And when we talk about redundancy, if Roman Anthony is an outfielder, there could be a redundancy there. Is that a place they could still make a move? Do you think there is a chance they trade away a major league outfielder before the deadline?
I mean, I think that it has to be a conversation because you also have Masataka Yoshida, who's working his way back up. We were just looking at images of Masa at first base in Worcester. So
the hulking presence he would be at first base.
Who's, I imagine, never played infield before. We'll have to check on that one. So the fact that they're exploring that tells you a little bit something about the logjam, right? Like they've already been working through this scenario. And we didn't even mention Wilyer Abreu,
right,
who had another good player.
And he had a week.
Right? So you're already looking at, as a default, between Rafaela and Duran and Anthony and Abreu, you're looking at least 4 guys for 3 spots. Then beyond that, you might be looking at, you might be adding Yoshida into the DH mix. It starts to get a little bit tight.
No doubt about that. Let's hear what Craig Breslow had to say. He joined us this week on the pregame show. We talked about the fact that July means you're now inside of the trade deadline, where their head is going into all that. Here's Craig Breslow when he dropped by our pregame show. So Chief Baseball Officer of the Boston Red Sox, Craig Breslow, on 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. Joined by Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow. And Craig, we're back to the future. I took the yellow off. Stuff doesn't breathe, by the way. We've talked a lot about 75, and there are some interesting comparisons there, right? Because Jim Rice and Fred Lynn and Dwight Evans, and you had a bunch of young players under 25 on that team come together and win a pennant. But you had Yaz and you had Petrosell and you had those veterans as well, especially with Bregman out after the trade to Devers. Is there a concern that you've got so many young players right now that there just aren't that many veterans who can sort of stabilize when the lows get lows and the ups and downs go through a season?
I don't know if concern is the right word, but certainly there are some guys who have been around for a while, and this is an opportunity for them to step up and lead. And I think we've seen that with Trevor, with Jaron. And obviously Bregman being out makes it a lot more difficult to impact those younger guys. But I think they're striking a good balance there. And, Alex has this job of needing to let the young guys be themselves and kind of grow and experience the growing pains that come with trying to establish yourself in the big leagues. And we also have to win. And we have to, provide the oversight to make sure that we're getting the most out of those guys. But we'll rely on the guys in the clubhouse to be able to do that.
That's a challenge for a young team, right? You've got guys who are still developing, but you're at the major league level where it's all about winning. And you see a big offensive night like last night. You see a day like Saturday. And those both began in a lot of ways with really good at-bats, right? The first couple guys last night, I think it was 12 pitches they took between them. We saw that 9-pitch Abraham Toro at-bat that led to a single on Saturday and got things going. That approach is something that Alex Gore's talked about that you haven't had enough of this year. Getting that and starting to have young players buy into that, what does that mean to this team?
Yeah, I think we've seen glimpses of it a couple times in the last 3 days, right? And, it started with Jaron having a great at-bat to lead off the game. And, this roster that we have, we think is going to be athletic and dynamic, and we're going to be able to take advantage of great team speed. And, we need to be able to play really well across all facets. And so, it's having great at-bats. It's being selfless. It's understanding what a situation calls for. It's getting extra 90 feet on the bases when we can. It's playing clean defense. It's all of those things. And, it comes together in a night like last night, and you see what we're trying to build. But then the inconsistencies has been frustrating.
You've talked about buying before the deadline. Now that it's July, you start getting questions about the deadline, right? Most sites, and I know you have your own proprietary formulas, which are probably better than anything I have access to, but most places have you 15, 20% chance of making the playoffs right now, today, the snapshot as we stand. Is that enough to invest in this team and go all in for this year? Do they have to show you something over the next couple of weeks to earn that? Sort of where does that decision-making process stand right now?
Well, I think all those tools, whether you're looking at ours, the things that are publicly available, they're telling us we need to win more games. And, fortunately, there's a lot of games left between now and the deadline. But we came into this season with a very aggressive mindset, and we believe that we were putting together a team that was capable of making the postseason. We still believe that's the case. And so, our heads right now are trying to figure out how we can improve this team and how we, add in places to bolster the roster so that we can make that deep playoff run that we had anticipated.
You got a couple weeks before the break, then it's a gauntlet coming out, right? The Cubs and the Phillies and the Dodgers, all first-place teams right now. It won't be easy here going up to that deadline.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a tour of NL division leaders, right? And we're going to see what we're made of. But, this is a group that has shown some resilience and we've followed up inconsistent or poor performance with a streak of playing pretty good baseball. And hopefully we're on the upswing right now. But no doubt that's going to test us.
You've talked about the payroll flexibility that comes with a trade like you had with Rafael Devers. And there were quotes from Scott Boras when the team was on the West Coast that Alex Bregman would be interesting in extending a longer deal. Has there been any talk? Is that something you would consider with that payroll flexibility? How does that decision-making process come together?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is, at least as it relates to the deadline, payroll flexibility gives us more options. But the trade deadline is not free agency, and so dollars alone don't represent necessarily the best currency to improve your team. We also have to think about the farm system that we've developed and the young players and how we may need to trade kind of what we would call future value for wins in the present. As it relates to Alex, he's been great. He's more than what we could have asked for in terms of what he's done on the field. Unfortunately, had an injury, and also in the clubhouse and in the environment that he's created for the young players. Right now, we're focused on doing everything we can to get him back on the field, but we love everything that he's brought, and when the right time comes up to have those conversations, we anticipate doing that.
Walker Buehler has struggled, and he's made it clear that he's trying a whole lot of different things right now. We've been able to look at some of the changes on the mound. You hear him sort of talk about what he's dealing with mentally as well as physically and trying to find it. How does the team support that? Does he stay in the rotation for now? Where do you go with Walker Buehler?
Yeah, so what you want, obviously, out of a starting pitcher is somebody who's going to give you a chance to win every 5 days and pitch deep into games. And, even when they don't have their best stuff, the off nights are still pitching deep into games and giving up some runs, but keeping you in it. And when you don't get that, you want accountability. You want somebody who's going to stand in front of their locker and say, I wasn't good enough, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get things back on track. Walker has been that, and I think he deserves a ton of credit for how accountable he's been. But he will be the first to say the performance hasn't good enough. So I know the pitching guys are working hard to get him back on track, and that's what we're committed to right now.
Tanner Houck also has not yet found it in the minors, and you tried the opener the other day just to get him sort of a different feel coming in, I guess. Where do you go with him from here? How do you get him back anywhere close to what he was last year?
Yeah, we've seen what he's capable of being when he's at his best. And right now, it's been a challenge for him to consistently get hitters out. It was in the big leagues, and then obviously the injury popped up, and it has been in rehab as well. I think we're still kind of trying to figure out some way for him to consistently challenge lefties. That's been a bit of a trouble spot for him. But I think what this comes down to is execution. He's got plenty good enough stuff between the sinker that he's throwing at 95, 96 miles an hour, the slider and split. He needs to be able to execute in a way that he can consistently get lefties out, because that's kind of been the trouble spot for him.
I want to ask you finally, Roman Anthony, 3 consecutive multiple hit games. Marcelo Meyer comes back from the bereavement list with 2 hits last night. We've talked about the young guys sort of finding their way. They clearly seem to be getting comfortable at the major league level.
For sure. And like I said earlier, this vision that we have for the roster that's going to compete for World Series championships year after year is one that's going to be dynamic and impact the game across all facets. And when Roman came up and he wasn't getting the hits, there was still a lot of confidence in him. You could see the way that he commanded in that batting. He never really expanded outside the strike zone. He was hitting the ball really hard. And then over the last handful of games or so, those balls are starting to drop. And we see the player that he is. And then Marcelo, the second he stepped foot on the field, you said, this guy he has the it factor, right? He's under control. It doesn't look like the game speeds up on him. He plays consistently good defense, and then we've started to see glimpses of the upside with the bat. All
right, good stuff. We appreciate the visit. Thanks.
You got it. Thank you.
No yellow jacket, but drop by anytime. All right, so interesting conversation. He's had a lot to say of late, kind of made himself, you did that deep dive on what's been going on with the front office. But I thought the really noteworthy thing out of that was him saying, we thought we were a playoff team when we put this team together. We still think we're a playoff team. And we are going into the trade deadline looking to add players and talent to help us achieve that potential. That's a pretty strong statement.
It is. There's value to clarity, too, in these things, right? I do think that there can be a benefit to decision-making when you're not, straddling the fence. We have seen teams that have pivoted after the trade deadline in the past. And in fact, Craig Breslow is a part of one. A couple of years ago, he was with a Cubs team that was actually going to sell at the All-Star break and then ended up going on a crazy hot streak for a couple of weeks and ended up being buyers in 2023 entering the deadline. They ended up being falling just short in the wild card race that year and losing out to the Diamondbacks, who made it to the World Series that year. But you put that into context and you kind of understand maybe a little bit more where he's coming from, right? I think that 2023 Cubs team was down to single-digit percentages in terms of their playoff odds, and then that's all it took, one hot streak to thrust them into a mix where they were, where their playoff odds were very clearly like solid enough where they should be buyers. So I also think that it's kind of the messaging matters right now in this organization. There's a reason why Craig Breslow flew out to Seattle after making the Rafael Devers trade and had the conversation with a lot of individual players about how he saw the team and establishing his faith in them. And so to retreat from that so quickly, like, you can't really do that right now.
So let's play it forward. We talked about this a little bit in the last edition, but you've got this sort of, if there's ever a weak stretch of the schedule, we're in it right now, right? You're going to Washington. They've not been good. You've got Colorado, who's been really bad. Then Tampa Bay for 4 before the break.
Yep.
Then you start with 3 consecutive series against first-place teams in the National League, right? The Cubs, the Phillies, the Dodgers. That's a 9-game stretch, about as tough as it gets. So you can say all you want right now, but you go 2-7 in that stretch, it's going to be real hard to add to this team at the deadline.
Yeah, again, this is the time of hairpin turns, right? I think to my horrifying experience, glorious and horrifying experience of driving along Cinque Terre and or the Italian coastline back in the day with a stick shift disaster.
A stick shift.
Stick shift. Anyway, this is a time when reversals happen very rapidly and in very extreme fashion. So, 100%, Tom. However they enter the All-Star break, that is not necessarily or should not necessarily dictate their position come July 31st. And there are some critical games against really good teams that are going to lead into that.
Which is really, it's kind of a, I think it's a point that we don't talk enough about is the lack of the August 31st waiver deadline. Because this is the kind of season where I think you'd still try to go in with the understanding I can dump off some salary if this goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Like you had that sort of backup. You don't have that anymore. What you do before July 31st is basically what you're going to do.
Which is why you've seen at least in recent years, at least a few teams taking a pretty proactive approach in early July and making a push to add. The Braves of 2021 or maybe the great example of that, right? When at the All-Star break, everyone's like, so are they going to sell? They're going to sell. And instead they pick up the likes of, Adam Duvall and, and make complementary additions, Soler, and they end up not catching fire would be a bit of an exaggeration, but improving enough, even without Acuna, to be able to get into the tournament and then to win the tournament once there. So, but they had put themselves in position to have a modest buy and then to have a sell if they had continued to spiral. So,
are the Giants of 25 in that category? Because they made their big move and they've been struggling.
What a concept there, huh? Just waiting for the rumors of Red Sox to express interest in Rafael Craig. Sorry,
Mike Yastrzemski. In honor of the 75 anniversary, let's bring a Yaz back to town.
Yeah, that would be quite a thing.
Would be something.
It is. Yeah. And it can happen for any team, right? But there's a reason why you only have this limited window to make your moves, and so being able to kind of accept those rapid pivots is to a team's advantage at times.
All right. We spent a lot of time this week talking about 1975, the 50th anniversary. We had a terrific retro broadcast that
incredible,
did a great job, super fun, and a perfectly timed rain delay. I'm off, the last guy who enjoys a rain delay, but it was great because it just gave us more time to talk with Jim Rice and talk with others about that incredible year. You were born that year?
I was.
I was. A kid. You're just a kid.
All right.
But I often say...
I don't sell my children, Tom. We've established that already.
I'm not selling them. Well, I don't know. We'll see what the price is. 67, 75, 86, 78 in there if you want. Those are the sort of the tentpole seasons leading up to the era of championships, right, from 04 on.
And it's part of what makes the Red Sox a distinctive franchise, right? I'm not from this area. I moved here for college, and to be able to understand and experience the richness of the history and the fact that it's carried with this fan base in such a the past remains alive, right? Like Larry Lucchino always talked about Fenway Park being a living history museum, and there is something to the Red Sox themselves being kind of a conduit of the past into the present. It is not just about the team in any given year, but it instead is a team representing something that extends well beyond that moment in time, that makes this experience kind of mind-blowing. And the whole experience of being around the Red Sox, a unique one.
And one man who has been around it more than most, more than a half century with the organization now.
Since before I was born.
Since before you were born. We grew up watching him when we were just little kids. He hates hearing that. The Hall of Famer Jim Rice, who spent a lot of time this week talking about that incredible 1975 season. He was such a great part of it. Of course, injured, unable to play in the World Series. No doubt in my mind, Red Sox would have won the World Series if we were available because they almost won it without him. And they definitely would have won it with him. Let's hear from my partner on NESN, the Hall of Famer Jim Rice, talking about 1975 as he joins us now on 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. We've been celebrating 1975 all week. Had the retro look going. Jim was overdressed as usual.
That's the way I dressed in 75.
You were the most stylish guy in 75, and you're the most stylish
One
guy
of them,
now.
yeah.
Things haven't changed. How fun has it been to think back and remember some things that maybe you haven't thought about in a while about that 1975 team?
I never really sat down and thought about anything about the 75. People talk about it, ask you certain questions about it, and it was unfortunate I wasn't able to play in that game. I had a broken hand. But still, I look at the guys that I played with that we all got there together. We had the good and we had the bad, we had the ugly, we had the sad. But it was great.
It is incredible to think about 1975 and what you were able to do in your rookie season. And did you ever stop to kind of to kind of take stock of what you were doing, the historic rookie season that you were having, that you and Fred were having together?
No, I don't think I thought about it. I don't think Fred thought about it. We just were two young guys that played the game of baseball and hopefully played the right way. We had a good team, and we had the key thing, I think, with the upbringing, the way you were taught when you were a kid how to play the game. And once you got to the big league, you were there with more guys that played the game the right way. They instructed you the right way. Those are the key things that you had. You had the foundation. And once you got to the big league, the foundation had already been laid. So the only thing you had to do was tighten everything up.
Well, it's super interesting to think back, right? Because you made your Major League debut the previous year. You had been on a Pawtucket team that was terrible. In terms of just wins and losses, the Globe coverage of it back then was it's, Joe Morgan is beside himself managing this team that's going to win 40 games. But there are two superstars that are coming on this team with Fred Lynn and Jim Rice. And Jim Rice and Fred Lynn, right? It was, Triple Crown winner in the minor leagues. 74, you got up to the big leagues, and that was tough. You guys had, a historically difficult, you guys were in first place, and then you weren't. And you talk about coming up with people who had established winning. How hard was it to make sense of exactly what was going on with the Red Sox when you came up, and it was just kind of a downward time for that 74 team?
I didn't think about it because you had veteran players. Even though I had a Triple Crown season, when I came to the big leagues, I was sitting on the bench because Knigler was coming back. And so there was nothing that I could do, and Yaz was playing left field. And so I just had to wait on my time. So when I got my time, I went out and put more time in with Johnny Pesca and became the person I am now. And I enjoy working. I wanted to work hard. We had more things like the players have today, but we didn't have that. And I was a sneaky player. What I mean by that, if I'm taking batting practice in the cage and a couple of pitchers walk up to the cage and find out where my feet are landing, things like that, I got out. I didn't want them to see anything, any advantage. So Johnny Pesca and I would walk out to center field, and I would take all my batting practice there. And my 16 years, I probably hit on the field one time because I was bored. So I didn't want to.
But you would hide. You would basically hide from batting practice.
Oh, yeah. And we didn't have guys that throw batting practice. These guys here, we had one guy, Walter Eniak. He threw to the non-lineup players, and then you had the lineup players, and that was it. So I just went out in the batting cage, just wore the batting cage out.
Talking with the Hall of Famer Jim Rice about the incredible 1975 season. One of the things you said towards that end over the last couple of days as we've been talking about this is the Major League spring trainings you had leading up to 75, you thought really even more than that 74 call-up, that's where you started to get comfortable.
Yeah.
And you would go out of your way to go on every
Every trip.
bus trip, every road trip to try to see as many major league pitchers as you could see in case you'd see them again that season. Talk a little about that when you were a young guy, just going out of your way. I want to get on that bus. I don't care if we're going across the state. I want to see as much pitching as I can see.
We were in Winter Haven, Florida, and, you had Cypress Garden. I didn't play golf, and was nothing to do in Winter Haven. So my thing was, hey, how are you going to get to the big league? You're going to get to the big leagues by being the best that you can be, and you watch how you approach yourself with certain pitches, because you had to hit to stay in the big league. If you didn't hit, you're not staying in the big league. And so my whole thing was go to every spring training game and play. We at least had to play 5 innings, and we didn't drive any cars. You had to get back on the bus. You started the bus, you get back on the bus, and that was it.
Yeah, you buried the lead just there. You didn't play golf?
No, I didn't play golf back then. No.
Were you going to Cypress Gardens watching the water skiing towers?
Yeah.
They used to.
That's right.
That was a whole thing there.
But I want to go. I haven't known you as anything but an incredible golfer who thinks about the game constantly. When did that start?
Before I really got involved with golf, there was a couple things that I told my wife. I'm going to be established in the big leagues. We have a house that's paid for. And then I started playing golf.
That was planned out.
Planned out.
So when did you start playing golf?
Like in 77, 78, something like that.
Didn't hurt you in 78.
No.
Right,
Golf
right.
didn't seem to take away from
Golf
anything.
turned you into an MVP.
Because I had Montgomery, had Hawk Harrison, and we started playing then, but that's when I really got involved. But see, when you sign a contract, either H&B, Hills and Bradley, will give you $500 or a set of clubs, and I took the golf clubs.
Was it worth more than $500? The clubs
Back then, no.
Did you come out ahead?
Because back then you could buy a whole set of clubs, woods and irons for $500.
Yeah.
But now, just a shaft
I've seen
comes
you
for $500.
spend that in an afternoon with a new driver.
Well, if Louis was around, spend it in one day.
You should have to buy him one.
Yeah.
We talk so much about what you could have meant to that World Series team, and maybe the difference that would have been made, right? As it is, but they had the lead late in that Game 7, right? I mean, they were that close to getting it done. When it was happening, well, how difficult was that on you to not be able to get out there and help? I know you tried to take off the cast. You tried to get out.
No.
You took off the cast.
Thank you.
So real quick, I mean, Alex, I don't know if Alex saw the story last night when we talked about it. Tell us how you cut that cast off again.
They had like a scalpel in the clubhouse, like a little blade on a little sharp blade, And when you dissect the frog, they show you how to cut and everything.
Oh my gosh!
Just
He
cut it off.
sawed through the cast on his wrist.
I may have the cast at home somewhere.
At what point? Like what game? What game are you saw? Or like is this before the World
First game.
Series?
Yeah.
First game.
Didn't know. He thought that you could come off the DL.
Wow.
And the rules back, you could now if you were eligible. But back then, when you're on the DL, you're on the DL for the whole series.
Yeah.
There's no
You could have
changing.
gone like, Kyle Schwarber and then some. Yeah, where you're coming off and, just showing up and
But even
changing
just
the whole
his
thing.
presence, because your presence would have, even if you weren't anywhere close to 100%, Jim Rice in the lineup would have made a difference. But
broke my hand.
you know how
in
close
Detroit?
how many things can go bad if that scalpel hits the wrong thing on your wrist?
Yeah. But see, you got enough room in there. You cut it and then you start peeling it back. You start pushing it back, and then sooner or later it's going to pop open.
And you think you still have that cast somewhere?
Yeah, somewhere now probably
That's
have.
incredible.
Yeah,
That's incredible. So, again, you can't. They come in, they pull you aside, and they say you
Can't play.
You can't come off the
Gotta
deal.
be in-
How difficult was that? You're there cheering for your teammates, obviously, and you're in the dugout, as you said last night. You were around for all of it, but you can't go out and help.
Right.
How tough was that?
Very tough. Because like we all know that even though you're not hitting, you still mean, or you could, in certain situations, you meant a lot to the ball club just by having a presence in there. A lot of times guys going to come to the ballpark saying, I'm not feeling good. But just be in the lineup. And those are the things that mean more to the ball club than anything. You are a team guy. I recall one day that Freddie didn't really want to play, but he played. And then I go back and I look at it. He probably thought about it too. He made a good play out in center field to stop the runner from scoring. We win the ball game. And that's just having a precedent. After you put another center field, he probably wouldn't make that play. Or think about the play that Dwight made in right field. Mm-hmm. If Dwight had decided he didn't want to play, never would have been made about just being there.
That World Series was obviously so incredibly close throughout. Like that's one of the reasons why it's remembered as arguably the best World Series of all time. What was it like for you to was the foremost emotion you were feeling one of like, I can't believe that I'm not playing in it? Or was there a point where, we've heard a lot about players in the middle of game 6 kind of taking stock, like Pete Rose famously talking to people and being like, can you believe this ball game? Was there a part of you that was, even as it was unfolding, able to appreciate it as, just like, holy cow, this is just baseball at another level?
No, it was baseball at another level, but still I think you have to look at a part of my situation was that I took the cast off. They said you can't play or you couldn't play. You sit there and you cheer for the guys. That's the only thing I could.
Yeah.
So you're watching it as a fan.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. So to Alex's point, though, that was a hell of a game to sit in the dugout.
That's where I was going. I looked at it as a fan that was able to be in a dugout with a major league uniform on, with major league players. That's it. Couldn't do anything else. I won't get no pom-poms now.
Yeah.
1 bit, 2 bit, 3 bits a dollar.
Did you go out to home plate after Fisk hit the home run? Were you part of that?
I was part
crowd?
of it. Somewhere
There were
around there.
fans jumping around. I mean, that was mayhem.
Yeah. That's one of the highlights that you'll never forget. And I think everyone could probably say, what were you doing at that time? Well, I was at home watching. I was glued to the TV, or I was at Fenway Park, or I was at Daisy Buchanan, or I was down at Jason, and I saw this. That was it. Yeah,
there was a conversation many years ago about one of the indie league teams that Ricky Henderson was on, and different players were talking about like iconic moments in baseball history. And so someone was like, "Oh yeah, where were you when Joe Carter hit the walk-off home run for the Blue Jays?" And Ricky was like, "I was on second base." That's kind of like your vantage point for this is just extraordinary. And I can't imagine the emotions that you'd go through. Like I talked to Bregman the other day, and he talked about like, being a spectator stinks. Like, I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. And yet, you're there with this. You are there, and you are physically in it, right? Like this. When Fenway is going, the kind of physical, the way that the park consumes you because everything is so close is just different. Like, were you kind of like short of breath in the dugout? Like, what was the action like from the dugout?
Well, the action was that, hey, you sit there and you cheer for the guys, and you sit there and you talk. And the whole time, I'm talking to T down at the other end, and we just having a conversation like, hey, man, we got to win this game. We can't make mistakes. So you're really going back over to game preparation and things like that, and hope that you can see something or pick up something that you can relate to your players.
No doubt about that. And we talked about this last night a little bit. There was also a little bit of that feeling that this was the beginning of a golden era of Boston Red Sox baseball, right? The number of young players, he was 22.
Right.
Fred Lynn's 23, Burleson's 24, Cooper's 25, Evans is 24. And then free agency came, right? The great Peter Gammon's book, Beyond the Sixth Game. I mean, it wasn't just a great World Series, but it was kind of the end of an era. We didn't know that at the time. We thought it was the beginning of an era. But that team, because of the changes in the rules, because of a contract being sent late in the mail, that group was not allowed to stay together.
It was like two kids in a room butting heads. You're talking about Capstein, and you're talking about Haywood Sullivan. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a dynasty with Fisk. You're talking about Rice. You're talking about Lynn. You're talking about Evan. You still had Yaz there for another couple of years. Rico for another couple of years. Burleson, Denny Doyle, even could have had Cooper there. So we had guys that came up through the organization that could have been a dynasty. If you look at other organizations, they made a dynasty while going out buying high-priced free agents. We had it right in our own ballpark.
Yeah, it was Big Red Machine, or it could have been Big Red Sox Machine, really, right? Yeah. Like that's one of the things that's staggering to comprehend when you think, that's you guys played the greatest, again, like arguably the greatest World Series ever against a team that's held up as iconic, right? Like we're seeing Reds fans walking around the park wearing the jerseys of the guys who were involved in that game, and it was right there. It was like, how do you obviously didn't win a championship as a player. Mm-hmm. How much does that stay with you? Like particularly given that you had the 2 Game 7 defeats that were both epic in Major League history.
Well, I go back and look at that. Out of high school, I thought I was a better football player. I had a full ride in Nebraska, but I chose to go to baseball. And then again, I never thought I'd play one day in the big league. I ended up playing 16. And then after that, after out of the 16 years, I became a Hall of Famer. I never played the game to become a Hall of Famer. It was just a gift that I had, and I played with a good team. If I played with a bad team,
that gift, I should add. Yeah.
If I played with a bad team, I probably wouldn't have accumulated those numbers. So I played with a good team. I played with a good organization, and I signed with this organization in 1971, and I'm still here.
Yeah, it's incredible. Was that the year? Was 75 the year that you didn't get the World Series bonus technically because you didn't play?
No.
What was it? Well, you told me a story once where the
is.
team stepped up and gave you. Give me that story.
That was not the team.
Okay.
So we're in Oakland. We're in Oakland, and my wife and I was the last to come off the plane because of my broken hand, something like that.
This is at the end of the ALCS?
Yeah. And then Mr. Yorkie stopped us, and he said, I know you can't play in the World Series, but here's something that I want to give you. And it was a bonus of $25,000.
Just to thank you for the season and to sort of cut a little bit of the disappointment.
And that was it.
Wow.
And that's why. And the thing about it, when I was coming from my contract, and, you got me on the roll, I'm just going to tell you the truth. When I came up for my last contract, and he's probably listening, you're going to hear something about it. John Harrington didn't want to pay me. Didn't want to pay me. So Haywood Sullivan got on the phone and said, we're going to clear this up. We're going to clear this up. And so we'll call Mrs. Yorkie. Mrs. Yorkie on the phone. She said, give him what he wants. I said, I don't want to be the Heinz Spade ball player. I want to be in that category. John Harrington walked out. Yeah.
That was at the end.
That was at the end.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but there's an importance to being able to maintain the relationship with someone who has meant a great deal to a franchise over the course of many years. And, and as you say, here you are. You're still here.
And that was it. And I've been here ever since.
Yeah, no doubt about that. When you think back on the great teams you're on, 75, 78, 86, obviously all teams. We'll throw 78 in there. Technically didn't make the playoffs, but we know that you would have won the World Series if you.
I think you would have been okay. You would have been cruising in with a wild card spot, Jim.
Yeah, every year.
Yeah, you had a bye. You had a wild card to buy. But wait, what was different about that 75 team? Because again, what made it special as a fan, I'm old enough and I'm from here. You came later. But I'm old enough.
Yeah, I was also born that year.
You were born that year. You were too young to remember. I remember. Bad, but what made it special again was this is a college town, and a large bulk of that team were the same age, 22, 23. They're the same age as the kids at BU and BC, right? You felt like, and you said earlier, Jim, y'all came up through the system. Mm-hmm. Like we'd been waiting for Jim Rice. We'd been waiting for Fretley. We'd been watching you guys in Pawtucket. Fisk a couple years earlier, Evans the year before that, right? Like we watched all that come together. So it felt like our team. You guys felt like part of us. There was a special connection with the city, wasn't there?
Special connection with the city, but also we had a connection with the older guys. It was called respect. You go in a meeting, you kept your mouth shut until they asked you something. You listen from Yaz, you listen from Louis, Rico, you listen from the coaching staff. We, as Dwight, Freddie, myself, we kept our mouth shut. We observed. And that's the way we were taught. And then when we felt like that we thought we were doing the right things and not doing the right things, they approached us.
Somebody was there to tell you.
That's right.
But you also had, you had the Buffalo Heads. You had Bill Lee, Jim Willoughby, Louis Tion. You had this sort of counterculture group along with the guys who were. Not everybody was keeping their mouth shut, Jim. Just to be fair. You might have been keeping your mouth shut. Not everybody was keeping their mouth shut.
Just because they jump off the bridge, I'm going to jump off the bridge.
But I thought it was kind of what made that team special for fans.
It did.
If you were a crazy counterculture hippie college student, there were guys on that team you could relate with. If you were a button-down, serious about life, going to work my tail off and overachieve, there were guys on that team you could connect with. There was a player on that team that could connect with anybody in this town.
Like Toby Keith said, I don't smoke that whack at the back.
Others did. Make no
that's
mistake.
Right. And so we knew who they were, and so we let them be themselves. But when that bell rang at 7 o'clock, we were all there.
That's right.
And we were on the field. And so we knew the makeup. We knew Billy and we knew the rest of the guys, Jim Willoughby. We knew what they were doing. But they showed up every day, and that was the key thing. And when they got there, they played hard. They pitched hard. And that was
well, it's like the 04 team, right, with Terry Francona back in town, where he used to talk so much about as crazy as they were in the locker room.
Yeah.
Crazy as, with Nelson, their friend, and Johnny Damon doing naked pull-ups and guys doing shots. Like, whatever was going on an hour before the game, they went out there to play and to win, right?
Yeah. It's like what the Major League, when the guy smoking a cigarette.
Yeah. Dude, Jobu offering shots to your bat. It's been a great week to reminisce. It's been fun to think back.
No, this right here was fun. This right here was fun.
Yeah.
How much though has like this whole process, right? Like of looking at Jemai, like wearing, like looking incredible as a sideline reporter.
He thinks he wears it better than you.
I don't. That right there, maybe. I would say like maybe 71, 72, but not 75.
See,
okay.
that's
70, 71, 72.
Last night, he was so dialed in, he was like, that was not 1975.
Yeah.
That was late 70, early 71.
Yeah.
I mean, but how vivid is that time for you? Like you get together with some of your teammates from that group, and you think, the Reds are in town, and there's, people bringing up memories from that World Series that's so unforgettable, that season that's so unforgettable. And I do want to emphasize, like, I know we emphasize the World Series itself, but the whole season arc is unbelievable. Like you're getting your footing as a big leaguer, right? Like that's a mind-blowing experience in doing it on the highest level of baseball team. How much has this been, like, do you enjoy kind of going through the nostalgia exercise 50 years later, or is that not who you are?
That's not who I am, but we think about this. We think about the thought of going to Oakland and taking 3 from Oakland because Oakland had a dynasty.
Absolutely.
That would have started.
You ended it.
That would have started there. That would have started there. And then no one thought that we could go that far with a bunch of 21 years or 24-year-old kids. And that was a breakup. Like I say, this is a college town, so you had all the kids say, hey, these guys are young. We're going to look at these guys right here. Yaz was going the other way. Rico was going the other way. And the other guys was coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of young guys on that team, no doubt about that. It was a special team. Special time. Thanks for the visit, man.
No problem. Yeah.
We'll go do a post-game show in a few minutes. So.
Yeah, like a little kid, like a little kid eating a spinach. Do we have to?
Do we have to again?
It's following the resumed suspended games. So does that mean it only has to be 2/3 of a post-game show?
No.
Okay.
No. All the post-game, all the pre-game, all the post-game. We're in for it, but no one I'd rather do it with, partner. Appreciate the visit.
Maybe,
all right. Jim Rice with us, the Hall of Famer. Thanks for checking out. It's been a fun week talking about 1975. Next week, we're going to have fun on NESN talking about the Monster. You know a little bit about that, too. It's going to be Monster Week on NESN next week. That's a whole other thing we'll get to. But for now, we want to thank you for checking out this edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, the best-selling truck in America for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. For Alex Speier, Hall of Famer Jim Rice, I'm Tom Caron. See you next time.